Readathon has inspired generations of Irish children to read as much as they can, all to raise essential funds for the more than 9,000 people across Ireland living with MS.
This November marks the 37th year of this initiative, and joining us in the studio to share more about this year's Readathon is Orla Marron, who is living with MS herself. Good morning, Orla.
Good morning.
Great to have you on.
Oh, thanks for having me.
So you've been living with MS for 8 years, but maybe bring us back to the point just before your diagnosis. Like, what brought on the suspicions that you needed to go and see a doctor?
Okay, well, I've sort of digging my head in the sand because I've grown up with MS. My mum has MS, so I sort of knew symptoms, and I was sort of passing them off and saying, "Oh, life is busy," and putting them down to everything bar going to the doctors because I felt as if I knew what was coming, but I didn't want to be actually told what it was. But it got to a stage that I physically couldn't continue on. I remember walking into work and my legs were like concrete and I was dragging myself in. I was having pain down the right hand side of my face that I wanted to rip the skin, so it's neuralgia it's called, and it's so painful. And I said, right, I actually can't continue on. There's more to life than this. There's something seriously wrong. I need to go to a doctor. And I did. And I sought help. And I got the diagnosis that I think I knew was coming but didn't want.
It's strange that you were, because you knew what your mother went through and you knew what it probably was, that you were so, not strange, I suppose that's not the word, but that you were so fearful of it.
Yeah.
Like, why was that, do you think?
I think it's because I can see how it impacts your daily life, because like people do have fatigue and it doesn't mean that they have MS, and people do have pains and aches and pins and needles. Again, it might not be MS. So I think I was just more hopeful that it wasn't it. What are the chances of it being in the house? Again, it's not a hereditary disease. What were the chances? So I think I was more going, oh, if I ignore this isn't happening, because I could see the impact it had. Now, my mum never let her MS affect us growing up, but I could see the impact and the decline that she has been having. So I think it was more that, no, if I don't get my diagnosis, I don't have to accept this. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's in denial. It's classic denial.
Yeah,
really.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And what was it like then telling your mum your diagnosis?
Which that was actually the funny bit, because so my doctor had rang, because I went into my doctor and I said, "Oh, I think I've MS," and he said, "Oh, Orla, it's not hereditary, you don't." I said, "No, I actually really think I do." He sent me for an MRI for peace of mind. He rang me, goes, "Your results are back, can you come in?" And I rang my mum on my way to the doctors. I said, "Oh, they rang me, I'm on my way." And they're like, "It's okay, relax, it's fine." Went in, the doctor told me, and I was going straight out to my mum's house, and she met me at the door and she goes, "What is it? What is it?" And I was like, "Oh my God, I have MS." And she goes, "Oh, thank God." I was what? And she goes, "We know what we're dealing with."
Okay.
She goes, "I thought it could have been like a brain tumor because the pains I was having in my face, or it could have been a lot worse." She goes, "We know what we're dealing with and we can deal with this."
And talk about the treatments as well that you're on. I know sometimes you were a bit of a guinea pig for a while trying to find the right one that works for you, but compared to when your mother started treatment and you, there's huge differences nowadays.
Oh, massive, absolutely massive. When my mum was diagnosed in 1991, there was only like 3 or 4 treatments, and now there's like 25, 30 treatments, and they've progressed massively. But like that, you need to find one that works for you, because the treatment that works for me mightn't work for somebody else. So you do need to find that. So that can be the difficult part when you're newly diagnosed, is first picking a treatment, then seeing if it works, giving it time to work, learning. After 6 months, they give you an MRI, see if there's any more progression. If there is, that treatment hasn't worked, you have to be flushed out of that treatment, pick another treatment. So it was 3rd time's a charm for me. So it was my 3rd treatment that worked for me.
18 months it took you to get the proper
treatment. It was over it was nearly 2 years into my 3rd year before I got a treatment that actually started to slow the disease down.
I suppose when you get a diagnosis like this, it's hard. It's something that's hard to wrap your head around, you know? Did you know about the supports that were available because your mom had been through the same?
But this is it. I was very lucky. And probably lucky mightn't be the right word to use for it, but I was lucky in the way that I knew who to turn to. I knew what MS Ireland did because I'd grown up with it. I've seen what the supports they give to my mum. So when I was diagnosed, I knew straight away who I needed to turn to. And that's why I wanted to be the ambassador this year, was because I've met so many people who are newly diagnosed and they didn't know where to go. They didn't know where to turn to. I was fortunate that yes, I was diagnosed with MS, but I knew exactly where to turn to, what supports to get, and I'm so grateful for everything that I've got in the past few years, because I wouldn't be here on this couch with you only for the supports that I've got in the past 7 years.
It's so important to have as well. But I know you've been talking about your own mother there,
Yeah.
and she was, thank God, we know what it is, and in case there's anything worse for you. But you're a mother yourself, so telling your own kids about that, how did you navigate that?
I only told them this year because they were too young. They were too young. Like I said, my mum never let her diagnosis affect us growing up, so that was my aim, was to not let it affect them. So, but like I said, they're older now, so they can see me going into hospital every 6 months for treatment, and I had to explain they're not silly now. You could, like when they were younger, you could pass it off, going, "Oh, Mum's going away for the day, and I'll be back." And if I was sleeping or if I was having bad days, Granny and Granda would take them away, or my husband would have them away, or whatever. You could pass it off. But now that they're older, they have more questions, so you couldn't really pass it off. So I did tell them, and they were brilliant about it. And I just said to them, "Look, Mommy will have good days, and Mommy will have bad days. But on those bad days, we'll focus on what we can do. So I mightn't be able to go out and play football or jump on a trampoline with you, but we can sit and watch a movie. We can read a book."
Exactly. And that's why you're here as well.
Exactly, yes.
So tell us about the MS Readathon.
MS Readathon, it's an epic reading adventure for anybody, from young, old, and everybody in between. It's a whole month from the 1st of November to the 15th of December, a reading challenge, and it doesn't have to be picking up a book. It can be a comic book, it can be a magazine, you can download your audio book, and it's just reading, get sponsorship, and raise vital funds, because all that money is used to pay for all the services that I've availed of in the last 7 years. And like I said, I wouldn't be here without them. So it's so important.
So I'm sure you'll be reading mad with your kids anyway over the next one. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Orla. It's been lovely chatting to you. Thank you.
You can find out more about MS and this year's MS Readathon by visiting the website msreadathon.ie.
We'll take a quick break now.